Hey, so a bit of an update on death meditation. So I did it again today. Although my mind was particularly noisy today. I had some trouble concentrating. That's all just part of meditation. But I was struck again by how difficult it is to imagine the concept of dying, right? It's just so, first of all, so abstract, and second of all, it's just so clear to me how little time I spend even thinking about this concept, which is why this is so, I think, interesting. But I'll keep doing it, and more updates to follow. But today I want to talk about an idea that's been on my mind a lot lately, which is, first of all, how can we have the most accurate view of reality? And do we want to have the most accurate view of reality? I'm reading a book right now called The Righteous Mind, and the concept, the main metaphor that he's using so far in the book is this one of this. It talks about how we make moral decisions, right? He uses a metaphor of an elephant and a rider, right? And we think the rider's in control because the rider is the one that talks and reasons. But he argues that the elephant is really in control, and the elephant is our emotional, moral reasoning, and the elephant goes wherever he wants. The elephant is driving, and the driver, the rider of the elephant, is the one that's kind of like a press secretary and just kind of makes up reasoning for the elephant's decisions, right? Which is an interesting concept, but I think there seems to be a lot of social science and lots of studies that support this idea. And even just some own anecdotal, or my own anecdotal observations, I don't know, just watching myself as I'm confronted with new evidence that is counter to my current beliefs. It's so easy to disregard that evidence, right? It seems very clear that rationality seems to be kind of, at the very least, a secondary process when it comes to things like political opinions or even moral reasoning, right and wrong. But that's been on my mind a lot, especially because today, so I listened to half of a podcast of The Righteous Mind, and it's one of my new favorite podcasts, and it talks about personality types. And the little snippet that describes a personality type seems to point to the idea that there might be some debunking involved. So I wanted to do this video halfway through because it's really interesting, kind of the inner turmoil I'm going through right now, which is I love personality types. I love Myers-Briggs. I personally found it to be a very accurate way of seeing the world, seeing myself. I try not to put too much weight on it, but I've really enjoyed that perspective a lot. And the idea of having some new evidence that invalidates this thing that's really important to me is really interesting, and it's kind of thrown me into this difficult position of what if they come up with some ironclad evidence that it's total bullshit, that it's 100% confirmation bias. Then do I disregard this whole thing that I've been really enjoying for a long time and have gotten a lot of subjective value from? So back to this idea of how to have the most accurate view of the world, right? From a rationalist standpoint, I mean, the answer is pretty clear. You should strive to not be attached to any sort of opinion, identity, or even worldview, to have a really loose grip on all of your perspectives and identities, right? And be quick to change your perspective and opinions based on new evidence. And granted, obviously you're going to get it wrong, but that's a more like this rationalist standpoint like starts to resemble the scientific method at that point, where you build in a self-correcting mechanism, which is rationality and new evidence, right? So, and again, like evidence isn't the only ingredient here. You could also just have new, better arguments, right? Better reasoning from different ideas. I think it would result in you switching your ideas quite a lot. And that kind of leads into this next question, which is it like, ought we to try to have an accurate view of reality? And I don't know the answer. I think there's people that my emotional elephant reasoning tends to say they should try to have a more accurate view of reality, right? Like people I disagree with politically, for example, or people who do things that I would consider immoral for religious reasons. I feel like there's lots of religions that have totally different moral values, and I would want them to have a more accurate view of reality and moral reasoning. But at the same time, like when it comes to this personality test, if it turns out to be total bullshit, like, it's gonna be a rough thing to try to rebuild. And I mean, furthermore, like, I think it's okay for us to try to, or I don't know, to at some point buy into the things that make us happy. And I wonder if to some degree, like, we as humans are incapable of a realistic view of reality due to how like prone we are to cognitive biases, right? To tribalism, to this elephant concept, right? Of after the fact reasoning for our decisions. So I don't know. I think so. Personally, I think where I'm at right now is I'd like to try to be more rational. And a lot of this too comes back to some of my personal past of having had such a strong faith-based view of reality for so long. The idea of striving to be more rational as often as I can is very appealing to me, because of that self-corrective nature, where if you do have bad ideas and a bad perspective, rationality, I think, has a better mechanism for self-correcting than, say, faith-based reasoning, which by definition has some dead ends there and relies a lot on subjective reality and like authority, where and essentially dogma that breaks the cycle of being able to self-correct for bad ideas. I think you could argue that's why, for example, some countries in the Middle East have like some very strong moral reasoning for doing some, I would say, immoral things, like denying women education, for example, right? Or even female genital mutilation. A lot of those things, they're based on faith-based moral reasoning, in my opinion. Were cultures to have better self-correcting structures for their reasoning, I think naturally maybe they would progress in a better direction. But again, this is also complicated because everything I say is that with the caveat that it's my elephant that's driving, and you guys are hearing my rider make up some hopefully pretty good explanations for where my emotional elephant is going. So that's it for today. We'll talk to you later. Peace.